Hi everyone, thanks for joining. We will be starting in next 3 minutes. Hello everyone, thanks for joining. Let's start our session now. So today we are going to talk about link queries or language integrated query. Today's agenda is to talk about what link query exactly is, what is the structure of link query, how to design a link query, and what are the basic operations that you can perform on a link query. Link query or language integrated query was introduced in .NET in 2007. It enables native data query. Now, what is native data querying? Native data querying allows you to query any kind of collection with only one syntax, and this is really important because before link query, what we had, for example, if you are dealing with databases, you need to know SQL. If you are dealing with XML documents, you need to know another type of query language. Similarly, for any type of collection or any type of data sets. In 2000, in 2007, after the introduction of link queries in .NET, this problem was resolved and a consistent model for working with data was introduced. So irrespective of what kind of collection you are having, you can query through it with the help of just one syntax. Let's head on to see how can we design a link query, what is the structure of a link query. So the typical structure of this link query is in front of your screen. So in order to define a link query, you must be having four details beforehand. You must be knowing the data source from which you want to obtain the data. You must be knowing the filters if you want to apply some kind of filter on the data. You must be knowing you must be knowing what type of grouping operations you want to perform, and finally you want to know what type of result you want to get from a particular link query. So the basic syntax of a link query is at the bottom of the screen. So we start with the word from, and then we define a placeholder or a range value that actually tells us that this particular variable or this particular placeholder is going to contain only one item from entire collection. So from a range variable in any kind of iterable. It could be a data table, it could be a list, it could be a data set. We don't care. Any kind of list it is, we have to define here. Then finally, we are going to define where and a condition. So in case you want to apply some kind of a filter, you can define the condition here. Then if you want to apply some kind of a grouping, you can definitely define grouping logic here as well by defining the keyword group and then defining the grouping logic just after it. And then you have to select what exactly you want to extract, because it's not like you are having some kind of data and you will simply be filtering out stuff. Many times you want to modify that particular data. When we are talking about data tables, you or Excel files, you might want to filter out some columns or filter out some rows, add in some columns depending upon the condition. You can do everything with Linq query. So with the basics out of way, let's start designing Linq queries. And I am going to open UiPath. Let me see if sound is clear. Yeah, I think we are good. So let's start designing the queries. So before designing queries, let us set a baseline, like why we need a Linq query. The primary feature of Linq query that I feel is the power of Linq query is the time saving. Like when we are dealing with activities, specifically UiPath activities, what we typically tend to do is if you want to perform an action on each item of a list, what we tend to do is we simply perform an action on each item one by one using some kind of a for loop, and then we append the data in some other collection. So I have here I have a similar kind of an example for you. So what I'm trying to do here is I am having a list input, and this particular input list is of type integers. This contains number from 1 to 1000, which is a fairly basic kind of a you can say moderate kind of a list, because it is having 1000 elements. So yeah, fairly moderate kind of a list. And now what we want to do is for each and every number which is available in this particular list, we want to increment it by 1. Okay, so if we are having 1 here, we want to increment it by 2. Sorry, we want to place 2 here, and if you're having 2 here, we want to place 3 here, so on and so forth till we get 1001 here instead of 1000. So for doing that, a typical UiPath logic would look something like this. We are going to run a for loop, and then we are going to provide a list here. We are going to determine, or we are going to declare a temporary variable that will store our incremented value, and then finally we are going to add or append that particular value into a new variable, and finally we can use that new variable for our purpose. In order to track the time, I have also assigned a start time variable, and at the very end I'm also writing the log. I'm also specifying a log message that will tell us time in seconds and milliseconds, that how much time it took to process just this simple task with just 1000 data points. So I'm going to run this bot, and let's see how much time it actually takes. I'm not highlighting anything, and I have also disabled the execution trail so that we can actually see what is the pure time, or what is the exact time that it is going to take in production to execute this kind of a logic. So it is going like right off the bat, it is going to take some time, but so let's just wait for it to be completed. And right away it is more than 10 seconds, and you can see for like such a simple operation, spending more than 10 seconds would ultimately mean that you will be spending much more in those scenarios where the data is really complicated. You are dealing with MBs of data rather than just bytes of data, and yeah, you will like there is some kind of a problem here. So you can see that just for incrementing the number by 1, it took us 50 seconds and 301 milliseconds just for incrementing the data. So the question arises, is there a better way of doing this? Is there a better way of dealing with data, playing with the collection, and performing stuff? Well, let's try Linq query. So in order to declare a Linq query, what we have to do is I'm going to use immediate panel as of now. I like to use this because you can tinker with a lot of stuff and you can see the result in real time. And once you are done with it, you can actually stop the bot, assign something in a variable, and you're done. You don't have to worry about that. You will create a query, that query will fail, and then you have to analyze. You can see the result right away in this immediate panel. Okay, so coming back to the, let me show you the structure once more. So it starts with from, then we have to define a placeholder, then we have to define the collection, and finally we have to say what we want to select. So I will say here from, let me call my, let me call my collection, or let me call my placeholder as num, because we are dealing with numbers. I'm calling it num. You can call it anything that you like. From num in list, now list input. So this line, these four words, what do they mean? I mean these, yeah. So these mean that from this particular list, select one item as a num variable, and then we have to define what we want to do with it. So I want to select that item. I want to select that item. So I will be saying num, and we are done. So if there was a scenario in which I just wanted to select a particular item, we are done. This is what we had to do, and if I hit enter, you can see we selected each and every item. But this is not our scenario. We have to increment the item by one. So in order to do that, all I need to do is I need to do +1 here. If I do +1, you can see just like that I got my data. Now let's see what is the data type of the output that we are getting. So for that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap this entire query inside a parenthesis, and I'm going to say dot get type. So you can see that this is an enumerable, this is of enumerable class, and it is having a select iterator. It is of type select list iterator. Quite complicated, and quite frankly, none of us are going to introduce this kind of a variable type in a variable panel. So how do I convert this particular variable type into some kind of a list or some kind of array? So it's pretty simple. So at the very end, just define a method, just call a method of toList, and just like that I got my number in the form of a list. If I do dot get type now, you can see I'm getting my entire output in the form of list of integers. This is what we wanted. So let us do a time analysis for this. I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to stop the bot. As I told you, in real time we are actually looking at the output as well, so I'm not worried about how my output looks like, because I've already validated that the numbers are being incremented. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to simply add an assign statement here. I'm going to say that list, let's add it in another list output. Do we have list output? No. So see here. Okay, I just need to increase its scope. So I said I will say list output here, and I will assign my Linq query here. So it is saying that system type cannot be converted to this thing. Okay, so I have to remove this get type from here, and we are done. Now what I'm going to do is simply going to go below, and I'm going to disable this for loop, and let's see how much time it now takes. So I'm going to run the bot. Earlier it took around 50 seconds just to run just to do this kind of a job, just to increment the numbers. Now it took 71 milliseconds. Notice the performance improvement. Notice that how well your code can perform when you're dealing with large. This is a very small data set. We are dealing with one-dimensional data with only numbers, and numbers are really small, all below, like I think int 8. All can fit in int 8. But still it took around like 50 seconds to process. But now it took 71 milliseconds, which is a fair enough, which is a good time for this kind of a data to be processed. So this is the power of Linq query. You can actually do your job, even though it look a bit more complicated. But when you are dealing with scenarios where you are performing time sensitive tasks, and you don't want your bot to be running a lot, or don't want your bot to be consuming a lot of time, this is the way to go. Okay, so this is how, so this actually gives us an idea of how to use Linq queries in, like how to use Linq queries when we are dealing with any kind of collection. For example, in this case, we are dealing with list. But what if I want to use link queries in some more complex cases? For example, what if I want to use link query when I'm dealing with Excels or data tables, any kind of data table? So let's analyze that. I'm going to stop the bot, and what I'm going to do now is let me just delete a couple of, or let me create a new sequence. Link with Excel. In this sequence, we are going to see how can we actually use link query to extract data from Excel and satisfy the business need. So for that, I'm already having an Excel available here. I will try to provide this code and all the related data within the description of the YouTube video. So if you are looking for that, you can come back probably after a couple of minutes, and you will be finding the code and the relative document within the description. Okay, so this is the data that we are going to use. And as you can see, this is a fairly simple data. We are having around like 8 columns, and this is some kind of a financial data. The columns that we are going to focus on are segment, units sold, and gross sales. Okay, with that, let's focus on segment. So you can see that here we are having different segments available, and here we are also having countries and everything. So okay, before going on or before analyzing the data, let me just read the data first. So I'm going to close this Excel. I'm going to simply define a read range activity. Let's use a workbook. Let's define it here. Sheet 1, I want to read everything. And I'm going to define a data table here, dt underscore input. So I got my input. And in order to work with link query, I need to have the data in the scope itself. So what I'm going to do is I'm also going to define a log message just below it. Again, this is just so that we could work with link query and we don't come right, outside of the scope just by reading this data. We need to retain the data as well. So I'm going to define info here, add a breakpoint here, and let's run this query. Okay, so we ran this query. Now let us see how the data looks like. So for that, I'm going to pop this immediate window out, and I'm going to say dt input, and let's print the first rows 0. So you can see that this is like the data looks pretty straightforward. The first, and let me also print the columns. So we have segment, country, and all the related data, and the data looks something like this in a data row. Okay, so let us define our first task. So let me open the document once more for that. So my first task is to extract a list of segments available. Not the entire segment list, but only unique segment that are available. Okay, let us see how can we do that. So in order to extract unique list of segments, what I have to actually do is I'm going, like, there are a number of ways of doing this within UiPath. But since we are dealing with link queries today, since we are addressing that topic, let's focus on that. And I will tell you how to extract a particular column as a list using link query. So for that, I am going to say from row in dt input dot as enumerable. Again, this particular part is optional. I do this because what this particular thing allows us to do is this particular thing converts our input data table into an enumerable object. Okay, so for that, let me just show you one thing here. So if you will see here, this data is structured but not enumerable as of now. Okay, but this data dt input dot as enumerable. Enumerable is something like some kind of a collection through which we can iterate. So you can see that this kind of a data is also structured, but this is now enumerable. I can actually access each and every one of our item in any kind of link query and easily extract the data from it. Okay, in some of your .NET versions, you will find that at least in latest .NET versions, you will see that this particular thing is not required. And in latest UiPath version as well, you will see that this method is not required. But I like to apply this so that backward compatibility is also maintained. Is also maintained. So from row in this particular data table, what I want to extract is I just want to extract. Now I don't want to extract the entire row. See, if I will type row here now, it is going to extract the entire row. And okay, from data table, let me remove this. Not okay. I'm sorry. Dot as enumerable. We have to write select here. Okay, so from a row available in dt underscore input, select that row. Very simple query. If I will run this, you can see we extracted the entire data just like last time. But now I don't want the entire data. What I want is only the first column as a list. How can I do that? I can simply say here item, and right now I'm going to use indexing to refer to the first column. You can use strings as well. So if I do this, you can see now I'm getting an enumerable collection of object. This is very important, and we are going to talk about this type as well. But as of now, you can see that I am getting the entire data, entire first column as a collection. So this is as easy as defining this very small query to extract the entire collection. It could be as large as you want, and with a blink of a second, that data is going to be extracted for you. Okay, now what I want to do is I don't want it in object type. What do we mean by that? What do we mean by this thing, like enumerable, row collection, and then object? Well, it means that whatever single item is available in here is of type object. So it could be a string, it could be a int, it could be a boolean, anything. We want to define the type as string. How do we do that? Well, it turns out it is very simple by using just convert to string. Just by encapsulating our output inside this particular method, we can actually get our desired output data type. So if I will go up, you can see that now I am getting collection of string. This is what was required. And again, it is a enumerable row collection. I don't want this. I just want a simple list of collection because that is easy to deal with. So again, I'm going to say dot to list. I know we have to scroll a lot, so let me do one thing better. Let me just get its type. So yeah, we got a list of type string. But there is one one small problem here, that entire list is not unique. You can see government is repeating, enterprise is repeating, mid-market is repeating. I only want unique items. So for that, we are going to use list method distinct. I know it is not showing in the IntelliSense, but believe me, it is going to work. So it worked, and you can see that we got distinct iterator. Again, the type has changed, but we can always typecast it. And we got these 5 items: government, mid-market, channel partners, enterprise, and small businesses. It was as simple as defining this query to get this data out of there. And I can simply say here .to list again. Again, I know it is not visible here in IntelliSense, but it works. Okay, so we got all the data that we required. So by extracting this, and you can essentially place it in any kind of a variable or any kind of a list variable in order to iterate over it, or if you want to just report it to someone, generate another string, you can do anything that you like. But this is a simple query that you can use in order to convert any particular column of any particular data type into a list. Okay, let us tackle some other scenarios. So my next scenario is to extract let's say I want to extract the total count on the basis of this particular segment. So what I want to do is I want to extract how much units were sold for government throughout this data. So we are having around like 700 rows here. Also, yeah, I forgot to mention we are having 700 rows available here. So fairly, normal size of a data. 700 rows and around 8 columns. Okay. So now what we are going to do is we are going to extract the sum of units sold with respect to the segment. So if there is a so if I filter this thing, let me let me see if I can filter. I have to enable editing. So let me filter this. So I can enable government here, and you can see I got a list of unit that was sold. And now what I have to do is I just need to sum this entire column up. So you can see that I'm getting a sum of around like 47,000. No, for not 47,000, but some very large number. I'm not going to calculate it because of the time. I'm not going to spell it out because of the time, but yeah, some very large number, around 4 lakhs. Okay, so we have to generate this. Essentially, our end goal is to generate this particular number. So how do we target this? In order to target this, what we are going to use is we are going to use the concept of grouping. If you want to understand Linq, you can probably compare Linq to a simple SQL query or any kind of any kind of SQL query. The syntax is pretty simple, similar to that as well. If you will notice here, we are selecting something from a particular collection where we are applying some kind of a condition, and we are also applying a grouping logic. So select star from my table where a condition is satisfied, and also group some stuff. So can you think about it? Like, it is pretty similar to a Linq query, but obviously you have to define it in this particular syntax only in order for this to work in here. And yes, one more very important detail: most of the details that you're going to find about Linq query on internet is going to be Linq query of C sharp. In UiPath, if you are creating with a project, if you are creating a new project, probably you're creating a VB project. So if you are searching for some kind of Linq query on net, probably it's a good idea to add VB along with that, because then you're going to get VB result or Visual Basic result. Okay, with that out of the way, let us discuss how can we actually apply grouping logic within a Linq query. So for applying a grouping logic, what you need to do is, let me clear out the screen first. Okay, so firstly I'm going to apply a grouping logic, and then I'm going to use the grouping logic's aggregate function, which is called sum. Okay, again a reference to SQL. So I'm going to say from row, pretty simple similar syntax, from row in dt input dot as enumerable select. So let me just do one thing. So let us define how do we actually how do we actually group all the rows on the basis of a particular item. So I'm going to say group row, group the rows by, then I'm going to say here on what basis do I want to group. So I'm just defining another placeholder here. We are going to talk about this thing as well. So group rows on the basis of row dot item segment. Let me just see if the S was capital. Yes, segment. So I want to group on the basis of segment here. Okay, and then I have to store the group object in some kind of a variable. This group object is going to be used in order for accessing the aggregate functions such as your sum, average, count, whatever, or even to access the first item of a group. So what I'm going to do now is I'm simply going to say here that I have to extract this particular, I am grouping on this particular column, and I have to save this particular, whatever the output that I am getting into group, and this group is my group. So what is group? I'm defining that this group is actually of type group. So basically you can understand it like this will contain all the functions that we have to perform. Okay, so before summing everything up, let us see if proper groups were defined. So if you remember from our last query that we have in total of five distinct segments. Okay, government, mid-range, so on and so forth. So if we are grouping on the same column, we should be getting 5 segments only, not more, not less. So let's see if we get 5 segments. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to say select PN. Remember that whatever item that I'm grouping on, whatever data that I'm grouping on is saved in PN. So I will be finding that particular data in PN only. So I will say PN, and I will be hitting enter. And let me write .toList here so that the probably data is visible in a clear fashion. And you can see I'm getting the exact same output as last time here. And why we are getting this particular output? because if I will come back here, let me remove the filters and apply the filter once more. Can you see here? There are 5 distinct segments that we have. So when we are going to apply a group now, we are going to have only 5 groups available with us. Now it's our choice what we want to do with the groups, but ultimately we are only going to have 5 groups. So I'm going to go back here and I'm going to go back to this particular query. And now for ending this query, what we need the sum of the group. Okay, we don't care about the group, we just need the sum of the group. So in order to calculate the sum, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say group dot sum. Now here, you have to understand that group might be having multiple rows. What do you want to perform? What action you want to perform on all of those rows? Specifically, I don't want the sum of the entire row. I just want the sum of this specific column, which is units sold. So how do I calculate the sum of this particular unit sold item? For doing, again, refer to the lambda function. If you want to learn more about lambda function, refer to the lambda function syntax of of VB, rather than referring to the lambda function of C#, which apparently it is all over the Stack Overflow. Okay, so I will write function here and I will define just another placeholder x, and I will say here that for x, what is x? X is my row. So from x, I will select one item, which is going to be my unit sold. Okay, and the important thing here is this still on any particular table, you know that if you access any specific item, it is of generally it is of type object, and before using it, you probably it's a good idea to convert it. So I'm going to convert into integer. So I'm going to use cint here, and what it is going to do, what it is going to do, it is essentially going to take a single group and it is going to add up all the items which are available in the group. But do we want to add the entire row? No, that is not possible. So what we are doing here is from a column, we are typecasting that particular column value to integer, and then we are saying that okay, now this is ready to be added. Now if I will hit enter, now you can see that I got the appropriate sum, and yes, here you can see that 1673 we got this number. Now, clearly, some of you might have noticed that earlier the number was in, earlier the number was also having some decimal data as well, and now it is not having. That is because of the fact that I used incorrect method here. I used cint, whereas I should have used convert dot to double. So by doing that, you can see I'm also getting decimal data here. So that is great. Okay, now we have we have our data available with us. We know that the probably you would have already created a relation that I can generate two lists of, like, one list is going to have my government, mid-market, and all of these items available, and another list could be having all of the sums available, and I can refer to both of the lists with the help of their indexes. That's a good idea. But what if I tell you that we can generate a single data type, we can generate a single output that can contain both of these details. And using Linq query, you can actually do that. Again, Linq query does not have any foundation on what type of output you can get. So we can do anything, literally anything that you want. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to change this query a bit so that it is a bit more intuitive, okay, and a bit more easy to understand. So what I'm going to do is, instead of selecting this entire thing, I'm going to selecting this entire group. I'm going to assign this particular group to a particular variable, and then I'm going to select that variable only. So for defining variables within a Linq query, you have to say let, and let's call my temporary variable as segment underscore sum. Let segment sum is equal to this. And then if I say here at the very end, I know this is getting like there is no more screen available. Let me just try to fit it somehow. Okay, now I'm going to select my segment sum. So you can see that we get the similar kind of output. Now the question arises, this is good, but how do I actually get my, how do I actually refer this particular output, or how do I link this particular output to my segment? So like one solution we already talked about, you can actually extract this thing as a list and another this sem as a list and then refer it with the help of index. But in order to extract both of them together, you have to just define an array here. Again, getting complicated, I know, but when you talk about like making your code much leaner, this is the way to go. And also let me do one thing, let me convert this to a string, because since government is of type string, it is better and it is a good idea to have segment also of type string, because currently segment is of type double. So I'm going to say here this, and I'm also going to define my group name here, and if I hit enter here, let me get the first item, then probably we can understand better. So you can see that this is my entire output, and this is the first item. So if I am referring the first item with the help of index, you can clearly see that the zeroth index contains the information about what segment we have, and the second index is containing its sum. So now you can think about, like, instead of dealing with two lists, you can just iterate over a single list, and you can get first item. You can get the first item to know about the segment value, and you can get the second item to know about your the final, the final sum of that particular group. So this is great. Let us go one step beyond. What if I tell you that we can actually convert this entire list of object into a dictionary? Well, in order to do that, what you have to do is, let me just do .toString here, and let me try one thing, and then I'm going to show you. Yeah, okay, I did this because we were getting list of object here, whereas now we are getting list of string array. Okay, now in order to convert this entire thing into a dictionary of segment, and its value or its sum, what we need to do is, we need to, at the very end, it is a toList method, or it is a list method essentially. We have to say .toDictionary. Again, IntelliSense is not going to help here, so we just have to trust the process. We are going to say function x, a lambda function, simple, and I'm going to say here x. So see, what we have to understand here is, when I said function in the group, I was talking about a single row. Okay, I was talking about a single row and what I want to extract from that single row. But when I'm saying function here in toDictionary, I'm talking about entire output of this particular list. Now, what is the output of this particular list? Within this list, each item is having an array. Each item is having a string array in which first item is the segment, and this is a unique item because we did implemented all the grouping logic and everything, and the second item is the sum. Okay, so what we can actually do here is, I can easily say that if I can choose the first item as my key and the second item as my value. So what I'm going to do here is, I'm simply going to say that x0, the first parameter that you can see I'm passing in .toDictionary method, is the key. So I'm defining x0, or the first item, as my key, and I'm defining same thing but the second item as my value. And just like that, I got my dictionary. So you can see that we got a dictionary of string comma string, where the first item is going to be your key, and in our case that key is the segment, and the second item is going to be your value. Okay, so let me quickly do one thing. In order to reduce some complexity, let me just stop the bot as of now, close this particular thing as well, and let me quickly assign it to a particular variable. Now let's create a variable of dictionary. Let's say output. Let's call it output. And let's quickly define a dictionary here as well. I'm going to say dictionary of string comma string. This thing, again, the benefit of immediate panel, I already know that output is going to be of type string comma string. So I don't have to worry about that there is going to be a kind data type error. So I'm going to run this bot. Let's dock it. Again, it was pretty quick. Let me just dock everything here. You can see that we are here at log. We are here at our log message. Let me clear everything out. and let us refer to our dictionary output. What if I want to refer only to one thing? So I can simply say here government. You can see I got the output of my government. So just by doing this, I got my diction. I got my. So you can see that probably if you would have, if you would have done with the help done this exact thing with the help of UiPath activities, the generic ones, probably it would have taken you like a couple of seconds, if not a minute, to do this. But now we completed this entire task under a second. The another thing that I would like to point out is we are using only one activity here. That is a simple assign activity. Otherwise, this would have gotten very complicated, and a person who understands Linq can easily understand this thing. But for understanding, the nested logic of for loops and everything, and then finally adding data into dictionary, that could take some amount of time, as per me. Okay, so but again, we are having all of our data, all of our intended data in a dictionary available for us to use. And yes, this is how we essentially deal with link queries within UiPath when we are dealing with any kind of a collection or a data table. I know there are a lot more examples available out there. There are a lot more use cases for this thing, and believe me, I am just scraped the surface. But as of now, yeah. So as of now, let's call it a day, and let me see if you have any questions. So let me load this thing. Okay, so Haridas is asking us whether, let me just bring it here. Okay, so Haridas is asking us whether we can use link query only in data table. No, Haridas. If you will go to the starting of the video, you can see that link query could be used in a list as well. Just probably scroll back to a couple of seconds and you can notice it. And I think yes, we are done. So guys, thank you so much for joining, and have a nice evening.